Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Haynes. I'm a sales engineer here at Decisions, and I'll be leading the Lunch and Learn. I do have some colleagues on the line. We do have one pre-submitted question, but feel free to ask any questions you might have in the chat or the QA, or raise your hand. We'll try to answer them today. So we're going to get started today. And the pre-submitted question is, somebody has two forms and they have two flow execution extension data types tied to those forms. And they're running a subflow and trying to pass in one information from a flow execution extension to another flow execution extension. So we're going to go ahead and go through that process today. And Janice, this is your question. And now you should be able to talk here in a second if you unmute yourself. But so I'm gonna go ahead and go through that process. So I'm going to create a flow. Actually, I'm going to create two data types. Give me a second. So the first one I'm going to call employee info. And I'm just going to add in 3 line items. I'm going to call first name. Now I'm not going to type this out just to save time. Last name. And I'm going to call this start date. This will be a date and time. And I'm going to create the second one. This will be first name, last name, and I'm going to add email. So now I've got both of those data types built. So now you have one flow which collects information from the employee form, and I run a subflow display and submit profile information. Now, Janice, I have a question for you. You said you do have process folders tied to these. Do you have a set process folder in your main flow and your subflow?
Correct.
Correct. Well, when you run two flow execution extensions in one execution of a flow, are you saving both in the process folder? Are you saving both the extension datas after the forms or before the forms?
After.
Okay. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to create a simple form. Add a submit button, and I'm going to go ahead and collect 3 pieces of information. Go. I'm lazy when it comes to typing, so I'm spending first FN for first name, LN for last name, and put a start date. Actually, I'm not going to do a date time picker. Do a date picker. So I'm collecting this piece of information. And then I'm assuming you do a set up process folder.
Correct.
Now I'm just going to simply duplicate this. I'm going to go and create my data folder here. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and create 2 more folders, one for employee and one for profile. So I'm gonna set my process folder up. This is employee data. I'm going to just link these together. Now for this example here, I'm just gonna give constant. Just nothing you should do in production, but just for this, I'm gonna go ahead and then after this, you're running a subflow, correct? Sorry if I'm moving very quickly. I'm just trying to get through your entire use case. In your subflow, you display another form. I'm going to define input data to this. Pass data into my May I ask why you set up two process folders in the same flow?
Because they're saving two different types of data and both need to be accessible separately.
Okay. That's So now this is what your process looks like. Show form set process folder, run a subflow, which has a form and a process folder. So we're going to go ahead and debug this. Almost. Is this the error you're seeing where it's not completing the process, or are you getting the error? Because I'm not getting that error.
Yeah. If you were to run that again and go to, I think, the execution report, it may show the error.
Okay, cannot get right here is the error you're seeing.
Correct.
Give me a second to look at this. So what I'm doing is, since you're passing it onto another form, I'm creating it where I rename the variable from, say you're going to call it first name and first name. I've renamed the variable to a different name where it actually outputs it from the form. And then I'm going to actually take this from the actual form. And be able to pass it along there. And save this. Brennan, have you seen this before?
We're passing the whole object?
Or no, I'm just passing in two variables, passing the whole object to the subflow. And then on the form, not passing the object out as a different variable.
Is there,
And
a
then
reason, is there a reason why we're passing in the whole object? Can we just pass in what we need? Just passing what we need here would probably be a
Okay.
better way. So just instead
Yeah.
of passing employee info, just the first name and last name, and just using that through.
I think I missed it too. What was the question we're trying to solve?
She's passing data between two flow execution extensions
Okay.
from two forms and having two set process folders. And when she hits the second process folder, or when she tries to save the second flow execution extension, it's giving her can't convert error.
Got you. Okay.
Still
So can't
doing
remember that.
So this is the error you're seeing, Jared, is cannot convert extension data value employee information to profiling.
Gotcha. So just from what I know from flow execution extensions, that paradigm should not work and that should throw an error. The reason why is because what the setup process folder does is it creates a process folder that's aware of the current context of the flow execution. And so what happens is, let's say if I had two setup process folders that are run, even if they're in separate subflows, what happens is it's going to reference the previous setup process folder that's been created in this first step here. So when you go to the subflow and you have that second setup process folder try to create data of a different type, then what decisions is trying to do is convert that type to the previous type. So the best way to handle that in order to be able to create two separate process folders with the same kind of executing flow is you'd have to run that subflow or in an asynchronous flow. So utilizing the start linked flow async, or what else you'd have to do is you can use a different data structure type, like a database structure or something that doesn't need that tracking. And then you can store that record and tie it back to the original flow execution extension.
Jared, quick question there. If I didn't know you could do that, would it be possible to use like just a cast object to type step to sort of get around this, or is your way the better way to do it, just using a separate data structure type?
Currently not that I know of, because just how the setup process folder is working and how decisions connects the process folder is based on that flow execution extension. So the easiest way to do that is you'd have to run this subflow. So Tyler, if you could change that subflow to an async flow, yeah, you got it. And then try to run it. And I believe at that point, you'll create a setup process flow record and it should work. And this would avoid having to create a whole new data structure. But I believe this paradigm should work, if I'm not mistaken.
It will work, Jared.
Okay. Good.
I'm trying to get around this, but it will work.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I thought.
Last POC.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I've had the same issue where I was trying to create several records for a flow execution extension. And in order to create several individual process folders, I had to run it async. So yeah, in summary, Janice, this would be the easiest way to do that. There's a couple of things you want to be aware of though. When you debug a flow that has an asynchronous flow inside of it, you're not going to be able to see the execution of that flow, because what the asynchronous behavior does is it says, hey, go ahead and start this flow that's independent of the parent flow that you called it in. And all you're going to see is a tracking ID that gets passed. So a way to test it is what we do is we'll put make it a normal subflow, make sure that it passes in the variables as expected. But then when you actually implement this, then convert that one back to an asynchronous subflow so that you can create those two separate flow execution extensions. Did that kind of clear it up?
And it's passing information to the form.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the biggest thing is just, like I said, it's just the setup process folder is tied to that execution of the flow. So to work around that, starting it async creates a whole different type of flow that's independent of where it was started in. And so you can then pass in those values.
And I don't know if anybody saw that I'm in version 7. I just turned on the global debugger in version 7. So with the global debugger in 7, you could do like Jared said in 6 or earlier versions, but with 7, I was able to actually go and see the async flow in the global debugger.
Yep, good point, Tyler. That will work around that.
Okay, I see we have external truth tables. Yeah, I can look at external truth tables. I have to create one, but I can look at that here in a minute. Let me go into Alex. Yes, I put a set process folder in the main flow and the subflow because that's how Janice had set it up. So I was trying to duplicate her use case. Okay. Is there a way to input a URL webhook so we can get chats in our rooms? Okay, Jared actually already answered that through the API. Okay, yes, there is a way to get webhooks in decisions. There's documentation on our website about that. And of course, Google Chat API does have it also. So Tyson, did that answer your question? Are you good with that, or you want to see more? Okay, good. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Joshua's question about external truth tables. Give me a second. I want to build one. So I'm pulling up an Excel file. I'm gonna build one here in a second.
While Tyler's building that, Josh, I was just curious. What do you have like the use case or the reason why
Yeah,
you're looking into this?
Okay, so a few things. First of all, the example on the documentation only has one column for the inputs, and we have multiple columns for the inputs. So I wanted to sort of know how to work with that. And then, the reason we need to use the external truth tables, we're trying to save some time. The way it's working for us is, our dev team like the project managers will, give us an Excel file that has all of the truth table data in it, and we want to sort of not enter all 100 lines by 10 columns by hand. So if we can have a fast way to I think this looks like the way to use a spreadsheet as a truth table. So that's sort of the use case that we're dealing with. Multiple columns of input, and then a singular output is fine. But being able to quickly take truth tables in Excel or CSV format from our project management team and use them as sort of the use case here.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And this is basically unchanged in 6 because we're still on 6. So it's same process basically.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just create a simple form just to put instant information on. So what I did, let's create a form so I was able to actually collect some information. And now I'm gonna run the external truth table. So what I did, I went back out to actually create the actual external truth table. I'm gonna go and edit my source. I'm going to choose my CSV file, which I just built. And there it brings in my external truth table.
Okay, so when we did that, we didn't get any fields up in the top. It just sort of all came down in the bottom, and it said you need to name them as, it wasn't working. That was like where, so this is where we got stuck. Like the columns wouldn't show, the data fields wouldn't show up. It just sort of got stuck in red boxes in the bottom. The documentation says to use the is qualifier on every field in the truth table. Is that what's messing us up?
What version are you on? Because it could be different for different versions. Six.
We're on 6.
Brandon or Jared, have you seen an issue like that in 6 where it doesn't populate the data fields for the external truth table in the report? I've not seen that issue before.
I think.
What
version is 6?
Yeah, what version of 6 are you running?
6.18, 6.1. I'll hang on one second.
Tyler, could you send me that CSV file that you just created?
Yeah.
Just Slack it to me real quick. Because I'll try to repeat it on my end.
Because I don't have the old version of 6.
6.17.1.
Okay.
There you go. I put it in the chat, Jared.
Thanks.
So this is how you create an external truth table.
So after this step, what happens next?
Oh, default output data.
After you finish declaring the data source, you can go back to the truth table editor, and then you could define the columns based off of the data that's present here. So close this.
Oh, so I shouldn't define the columns first in the truth
On the
table. I
screen,
should
we
first.
don't have default output data.
No, you have to use the report first, and then here you can select from what's available inside the report. After
Okay, because again, on the documentation for 6, it definitely says to set up your columns in your truth table first, and then go ahead and do that. But I'll try it the other way too.
Yeah, I'm uncertain whether there was a change between the versions.
That's fine. Just sort of want to make.
Let's just. I would log into 6 if I can remember my password to 6. I apologize. I can't remember my password to my 6 environment. Or maybe I just got in. Yes. So I am running. I'm running 6.15 is the version I'm running here. So let me just go ahead. It's not a designer folder. Apologize for this. I'm not in 6 very much, so I don't play in this environment very much.
Is most of your user base now on 7?
I wouldn't say most of our user base. We do have some users using 7. One of the big things why I think some not all of our user bases in 7 is because there are some key features that aren't available in 7, like multi-tenancy. That's currently not
Right,
supported.
right.
So
That's what's holding us up.
yeah, so I think they're hoping maybe later this year they would have that available. But yeah, I think most of the user base is like 617, 618 is where we're at. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, because I know you probably support metrics on that.
Yeah, I don't think I forget what the exact number was because I asked this recently, but not everyone's on version 7. I think most of our customers are still on version 6. And I think the goal is to get most people onto 6 or 7 and eventually get everyone to 7. But I think our main goal is getting everyone on to 6 right now. We still have a few stragglers on 6. I think we still have a customer on version 4.
I know we have a customer, yeah. There's my same data source. Okay. Fresh wrote his Phil's name.
Okay, so I'm gonna try loading the CSV first and then going back to the truth table.
Okay.
Then so then we can let's take it. Let's just want to see it to the end here.
Can somebody who works in 6 more than I do remind me how to add a column in 6?
For the report, you can click on
Yeah,
add the data field. If this isn't already part of that, yeah, you can click if it's a part of the data source. Are you trying to add like a calculated column or?
No, I'm added the default output data.
Oh, okay. Brian, is that on the actual truth table report?
I'm sorry, I stepped through it. Could you ask that once more?
This default output data. I don't really work too much with external truth tables.
I think should that column be in the
in the Excel file.
In the Excel file. That's my guess.
Let me get a screen grab of this real quick so I can send it to one of the developers that I know that's working on external truth tables.
Default output data, is that a setting in the truth table itself? Somewhere you configure.
No, I didn't like that at all.
If you close and go back to the truth table view of it, is there anything that's related to that name output data in that view? So there's like
The only
sample
thing
data,
I get is this
external
right here.
source. Default
data.
sample set, it's down on the bottom.
The only thing I'm missing is external data sources missing column default output data.
Yeah, and that's different than the sample set.
And adding the columns. Do we add the columns to the CSV?
That's what I'm doing. I've added it.
That didn't help.
It doesn't like the file now. It's still giving me the same error.
So I just reached out to one of the developers that has worked with this, and they suggested changing one of the columns names to the default output data, but you've already done that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's try. I can just. Still gives me this error.
Does the documentation say anything about default output data?
The developer's about to join, so hopefully he can help out with this. Smoothie's here.
I found it. Go back to the report real quick. Is that Tyler? Go to, yeah, and you can remove that default output field. That should get rid of that under required fields.
Mhm.
To the right.
Oh,
Yep, click that.
There.
There you go.
Oh.
That'll remove it.
Nice. That was
thank you.
simpler.
Yeah, Josh, was that? I don't think that's something you need there, right? The default output field.
No, we can. I mean, it's gonna be called. It would be better if it's called something else altogether. So.
Okay.
Something I love about decisions, it's always a team effort, being able to actually pass information in.
Hey, Bundesir, I see that you joined. I think we figured it out. We just had to remove that default output data from the required fields. Let me move to the panelists. Is that any sort of, is there any problem with that at all?
No, I think we can do that. I just want
Okay.
to see that. I want to see how it works.
Okay.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
So the is verb doesn't need to be it can be any verb really. Is that true? Because again the documentation for 6 at least says
So this has to match exactly.
oh you rename the column to match
Yep.
it.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay. Got it. So then in that sense you can use any verb you want.
Hey, Tyler, I just finished working with Will, so I can show how this works.
I almost got it working, Jared.
Okay, if you almost got it. So basically, yeah, do that, set it as a string, and then go to the field. So select the field for yes,
Yep.
no, and then switch that, and then click, yep, that was it. That was my issue too.
Okay. So Travis, I know this is a lot of ways. I've done a lot of clicking, but do you see how it can be inputted in 6?
Yes. No, this is very helpful. I'm glad we have this recorder for prosperity.
Yep,
Now,
you can scrub through it as many times as you need.
Yeah, exactly.
and now
Yeah.
my ELT is here. So then I can create a flow. Now for everyone on the call, I am moved to 6. So you see the UI is a little different. I'm a lot bigger fan of the UI in 7.
Yeah, it's a little bit more accessible. Seems.
Yes. So I keep going to my left-hand side of the screen every time I try to.
I'm curious, Josh, just from your experience, I know you referenced the documentation. Did the documentation go over that step that Tyler just demonstrated, where you have to kind of setting the field and changing the field of that kind of report designer to get that output to work, is how you would set that up?
I guess it does. It just isn't like clear. I guess it's not. It was like maybe.
It's not very clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I would say. It's not very clear. I mean, if I read it enough times and looked at the picture very intensely, I would be able to sort of understand what I would need to do. But this live tutorial is very, very, very helpful.
No, yeah,
We'll save us a
absolutely.
lot of time. So I appreciate the effort here.
Yeah, and thanks for the feedback, because we definitely want to, if it does need to be clear enough, we can definitely just, put in a doc ticket on our end and say, hey, let's kind of point this out. Because if you came across this hiccup, and it, me and Tyler, who've been in decision for a little bit, also had a hiccup with it as referencing the documentation. So at that point, it's something that we should revisit and say, hey, let's make this, clear on how to set it up. So thanks for the feedback.
Maybe like a couple GIFs that would show where you're clicking around. Or
Gotcha.
just just a video tutorial in general would be or a link to this video, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Maurice, if you could write that down, and that be something as a doc team takeaway, where we have some type of GIF or something that highlights those steps that Tyler had to demonstrate to get that output data to work, so that it's just clear on what the user needs to click on, because there are a lot of clicks in for this setup.
So you say like a GIF to show like the steps going to making the adding the data Excel file and that part.
So not necessarily making the Excel file, but like switching the title in the report designer. So I'm looking at the doc right now. So on step 12, yeah, step 12, if that could be a GIF, just so it highlights that, hey, and then like a little like blue blurb that just says, hey, this is where you're setting the output, or this is the part where we're setting the output for the truth table.
And it needs to match the actual column name or in the report.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says, okay, this column name needs to match. This field right here needs to match the column name in the report.
Yeah.
So just to show you how this works, I'm gonna go and debug this. I'm gonna put my name in. My age, I think I put 21. Then yes, the answer is yes. And as you can see here at the truth table,
yeah,
you can see it called right here. This is the truth table, Tyler, 21, 21, and the answer is yes.
Yep.
So hopefully, Joshua, I know it took a lot longer than it should have, but hopefully this helps you it helped me understand strong truth tables and some issues, and everybody else on the decision team, and hopefully everybody else on the call. How strong truth tables work. All right. Okay, so let me check. We have another question come in. Is it possible to loop through each field in the data structure and add its name and value in a row in 2-column HTML table? Only if the field has a value. The output would be the full HTML of the table. Okay. So I'm going to go back to 7. No, Google tell me my passwords. So let's go ahead and create a simple data structure. Now this data structure, I'm sorry if this has been an anonymous attendee, so I don't know who has it. So I'm just going to select a different database structure. I'm just going to do a database structure. 1 second. So I'll just create a name and age. Simple database structure. So all I'm doing right here, I want to be able to quickly add a data structure. So I'm gonna use the same Excel file just to import data quickly. I'm gonna actually add a third. So now I've completed this and actually saved these into my actual my file. Okay, so you're gonna loop through these. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating a for each step. I'm adding a sum step. So what I am is going to append HTML lines, and I'm going to do the string builder. Just going to build this data. I'm actually going to do on my tags. My tag comes through, and I'm going to do item name and age. Wrong step, excuse me. Add step. So why I'm adding the add step to this is the ability to be able to do line by line for each of these. And why I add the add step in here is I pick the item index, which is that, and then I just add one to it. So this allows me to create different lines for each line of the imported data. for the HTML table. Now, of course, the tag you can place in here, you can place anything you want to. It could be now I'm just creating this right here. It could be creating a table if you want to do an HTML table. I'm just keeping it simple today and just doing lines. Debug this using that same file as before. Give it a second to import the file.
I think it errored out, Tyler. It's red.
Find this. Extra columns. Oh, default output data. Thank you, Jared.
No problem.
Still getting an error. Age is not a value. Okay. So there you can see right here, I've appended the lines and I can view my input data on these. And right there is my line count 3, and there's my HTML. Now I could create this to a file, or I could create it to an actual, like an input to the file, but this shows you how you're able to create the string, be able to do the line count, and actually create this temp HTML file. Okay.
To extend that further too is you can use the I think it's the inline HTML display on forms, and so at the end of it you can tell it to run an HTML inline embed on that form control, and then you can actually see that HTML appear. So if we added the the T body and then the T rows, and we looped through and added those special tags for it, and then we outputted to that form control, I'm pretty sure it's like HTML display or HTML something in the form control in the form designer. If you look it up, map that in, map the HTML string to it, and then you can display it that way if you want. If you want to use a decisions UI, you can. Oh, yeah, type in HTML display. Yeah, okay, good. I knew it was something called that.
Yep.
And so yeah, you just switch it to inline on the display mode, all the way to the right.
Yeah.
And then you can just map in that HTML text.
Data and then pull it from the data. Source data. Okay, and the last question we have today, we have about 3 or 4 minutes left, is what's the best way to sum values off a categorization field? We have 3 types of categories, A, B, and C, with a list of 100 values. We already have a flow that picks the category working, but I need to sum the amounts under each. And the number of categories can be dynamic. Okay. All right, Tyson. So the best way to sum values over categorized value. Well, the best way to do that was once you do the fetch entities. I'm assuming you're doing a fetch entities, Tyson, to get the flow picks of the category working, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay. So the best way to do that would just, you can use a sun step after you use a fetch entity step, and you can actually pass in the entire list of decimals. So I'm doing, oh, I pass it all as a string, but I could do a count, but I could do a list of decimals and pass out the entire list, and the sum step will get that. Is that what you're looking for? There's really just using the sum step to be able to do that based off categorization fields. So if you do your fetch entities, then you can pull a sum step in and pass in the entire list of all the results. So it could be all items. Look at it here. This doesn't have anything, but it says you can pull as an all items as array. You can pull in all of the items, all ages. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and it's a decimal. It's passing a string. But you can say, okay, I want all ages from into results, and then pass that information into the sum step, and it will sum that for you. So Tyson, does that answer your question?
Yeah, because then you would just use the fetch entities filter to filter down to the categories, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Cool.
Correct. Which in the filter fetch entity step, you could always add in a fetch criteria of the category working, or you can actually pass in the ID of the category working into the fetch entity step, and then pass that through also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, everyone, thank you for your time and patience today as we work through a couple things. Hope you all see everybody on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Please pass any colleagues you might know or any people who use decisions. Thank you for your time today, and everyone have a great rest of the day and a great weekend.